Hi, everyone. Welcome. Want to wait till I get confirmation that you guys can hear me. I guess the last couple times there's a delayed start time, so please confirm if you can hear me. And also see Leo here. Please confirm if you guys can hear me. Okay, Roxanne, thank you. Assume you guys can see us as well. And so welcome. My name's Carl Steinbeck. Thanks for joining us tonight in our efforts to support justice for the Markells. And I just think it's really amazing, all the different followers now, the Justice for Markel efforts. It seems like every couple of days there's a new channel talking about the other Adelsons that haven't been arrested. It's like they've sort of moved on from Donna, even that they're pretty much wondering what's going on, especially with Wendi. Why hasn't she been prosecuted yet? So that's great to see this extra dialogue, and also the I think the public pressure that's building as well is for the momentum that we've seen in the courtroom for the state attorney's office. So I think these two things uniting and coalescing are beautiful things for justice for Markells. And so the main topic I want to talk to tonight was this issue of speedy trial. We've not definitely heard the word speedy trial mentioned or demanded or filed by the counsel for Donna Adelson. And in looking at some of the Florida laws, I know I said previously there's like 175 days speedy trial requirement. But as Karina Joy had pointed out, who's from Florida, I believe, she mentioned that there is the other requirement, if you put it in writing, that basically the prosecutor has between 5 and 45 days after the filing of that motion to basically get it to trial. And so I guess it's 5 days and then another 45 after that for a total of 50 days from the time you file it to be able to get to trial on felony cases. So that's including a murder case. And I mean, 50 days on a murder case would be extraordinary. I would say it's really never going to pretty much happen unless the defense counsel thinks they can spring something on the prosecutors. And it really does send prosecutors scrambling normal if they would see something like that. I've not seen jurisdictions that can even expedite cases that fast by statute. The fastest I've seen before is like in the military, you have 90 days to get somebody to trial if they're in pretrial confinement. And then, of course, any defense delays would tack on and not count against the government. So here in Florida, it looks like they got to get it to trial within 50 days from the time of that filing, and it could be as soon as 5 days. So that could really put a lot of pressure on the prosecution. However, the one caveat for that is there's also a requirement for the defense counsel that I saw that's basically they have to certify that they're ready to go to trial, that they're familiar enough with the case, they've investigated, and they're comfortable and ready to go to trial after their investigation because it's that thorough. But I was thinking that keep in mind, we still don't have full discovery complied with because of all the digital stuff that they pulled from the high-rise condo for Harvey and Donna, as well as what they were carrying with them when they're trying to flee the country on the airplane. They had phones with them. So downloading all that, going through it and cataloging it, and also going through their emails. We've seen search warrants for emails, also for a MacBook type tablet that dates back to 2014. There's probably a lot of stuff on there. They're probably pulling stuff off the cloud as well. So they probably have a Tiger team at the FBI that's pulling this data down. And if they do have a sooner trial date, then obviously the agents move quicker to expedite that kind of thing. And so in this particular case, I think that, you're probably not going to get to trial that fast because the defense can't certify that. I would think that they've seen all the evidence because whether it's inculpatory or exculpatory, if they haven't seen it yet and it's not been processed yet, then how can they really make that statement? So that's why I do think it will be still here in the next coming months. It's going to be before June. And so April, maybe May is when I think is the most likely window we're going to see. I've seen the data's moved now a couple times for the next management conference. It was originally on that storm date where they had to bounce it out to the 30th, I believe it was, and they moved it back to the 22nd of January. And then the latest change again is for the 1st of February. So that may even move again still. I don't know what communication is going on with prosecution, defense, and with the judge, but there might be some email exchanges with the court coordinator or something like that. That's normally how courts work in America. And so, in any event, I do think that the prosecution, the advantage they have in this case is that other than this new digital evidence that they're trying to gather from the search warrants, they basically have this case locked and loaded, ready to go. They could just pretty much do the exact same thing they did against Charlie, and they would get a conviction against Donna as well. So there's no doubt in my mind that she's going to get convicted. And in a absolute worst case scenario, you could say a hung jury, but I would say that's so far fetched into oblivion that it's not going to be realistic. And I think that the conversations you're hearing in the social media channels aren't even such that there's any really doubts that Donna would be convicted. So I think that just like we had in the Murdo case, there was a lot of naysayers saying, "Oh, the government's messed up their case." There's even attorneys talking about it all the time on different channels and on social media, talking about how the government hadn't proven the case and they had a lot of weak evidence and all that kind of stuff. And as I've said on that one, I mean, that was a slam dunk win for the government. As soon as I saw that one clip where he was there at the kennels, I realized it's game over. Everything else is going to unite around that kind of guilty evidence that you cannot argue, you cannot change it. And we got that same kind of signature earmark of type of evidence against Donna with the wiretaps, her talking in code, her also being the one to set up the Geek Squad appointment. So I think those kind of things are just really painting a perfect picture of her involvement that defense cannot have any reasonable explanation for that. And then you talk about the hate behind it as well, and you bring up the nasty stuff that was going on, the way the kids have been treated, not only that were going on since the divorce, but even up till today. So even up to today, the kids are suffering, and these are the kids of that were from Dan Markel and also Wendi Adelson, and these are the two boys. There was a bar mitzvah here in Florida on the 13th of January, and I saw some of the video of that, and it was really, really troubling. And what the really elephant in the room, of course, was who wasn't there. And so besides the Markels not being there, and obviously, of course, this is something that Dan Markel should have been participating in as well and enjoying, but obviously he wasn't there. And but who could have been there? Who had the choice to be there if they were not disinvited and or never invited? I can't remember which the case is for the Markels, but they obviously were not there at the bar mitzvah. And so what a tragedy that's for the boys, just to cut off that whole side of the family tree. And then I noticed that Wendi had made a statement about Abba. Abba was like the loving term that the boys used for their dad. And so referencing him, how proud he would have been of the son there that was getting bar mitzvah. It was just really, really just a calculated maneuver. I would say that that was no doubt something that a defense attorney would do as well, to make sure you mention that. And so that was something also was scripted out. I mean, I thought that was really bizarre. You got a bunch of advanced degrees. You're also an attorney, and you need to have a written script to what you're going to say to your son's bar mitzvah. So it didn't seem like it was coming from the heart at all. That's my perception when I see that. And so with that going on, the reference also to NRA, National Rifle Association, was in her comments as well, and I thought that was just really, really odd and bizarre. And so it was just really was a time that is really more about what wasn't happening, more even so than what was happening. And then, of course, the other elephant in the room is, where's Donna? Why isn't Donna there? Why isn't Charlie there? And so the synagogue just acting like, everything's fine with the Adelsons. Nothing's going on here. Nothing to see. It was just really, really quite astounding. And so anyway, they're going to be picking them off, though, one by one. More's coming down the pike. Just like Donna said, they're coming after them one by one. And little did Donna know, she was just days away from her being picked off as well. So the march in advance continues of the quest for justice. The state attorney's office is stepping it up. And as I said, they got this huge momentum as well. So I know some other folks have commented on the clothing attire for Wendi Adelson. Please, let's not talk about that. I don't want to see any type of crude comments or comments about that are degrading about that kind of thing. Let's be above but board on this kind of thing. And like I say, it's not about that. It's about um, the lives of people, how they've been traumatized and affected, and what this really means for the boys growing up. And are they ever gonna really get to hear the truth from somebody that they actually live with? And I couldn't believe how big the older of the two boys was, how tall he was, and whatnot. So this was really, really just, you just wonder, how can people be that cold and calculating that they don't even invite the other family there? And this is a Jewish faith that's been, has a long history of persecution and tragedies, and just outright cruelty of different governments around the world, including, my German background, that the Germans did to the Jews that we all know about. And so, not that my family was involved in any of that, but still, I mean, just the cruelty that existed around the world and what we've seen going on throughout a lot of the history and whatnot, the absolute cruelty and savagery. So anyway, you think there'd be some kind of coalescing of in unity of, let's just put our differences aside and just do it for the boys. Do it for the boys so they have memories of the Markells there. But obviously that's not important to them. And I think this is really going to come back to bite them when they do charge Wendi. I think the fact that there's been a denial of all this visitation, and there's just a short window that they don't even know the boys. They get to see them for maybe an hour. And then, as we know, Donna mocked them as not even Ruth trying to hug him and kiss him and whatnot, is being like it was only there for like a photo op or something like that. That was so ridiculous. No, they've actually been fighting and um, suffering all these years because they want to be an integral part of these boys' lives, and to not even be part of a religious celebration of the boys advancing into maturity is really such a huge tragedy. And I can't even, I'm sure it's even more significant of a loss for the boys that they'll recognize later on in life. And I don't fully understand the bar mitzvah and all that entails in terms of its spiritual significance and family significance. So from what I do understand of it, I think this is something you're robbing from the boys again, just like they robbed them of the last name Markel. They should be bar mitzvahed under the last name Markel, and that's been stripped and robbed from them as well. So just that kind of stuff getting in front of a jury, I'm telling you, a jury they'll be having smoke coming out of their ears the way these boys have been treated. And when they hear about the denial visitation, I really hope they bring Ruth and Phil to testify about what a wonderful son they had and what was stripped from them, and as well as these denials of visitation. Because as we know, in the last trial for Charlie, we only had the FBI agent talking about that in rebuttal for when Wendi denied the boys having any difficulty seeing any Markells, including she used the term unfettered access after Donna first mentioned that term. And so she basically said, yeah, they have unfettered access, and been seeing the boys 2-3 times a year, when that's just flat out wrong. So in any event, that's my opening statement for tonight. And with that, I would say if you do have questions, please put them in red. And if you can put triple questions and whatnot. If you had questions previous to now, I'm not going to go to those. So if you just want to retype your question, please. And I'll go from there. So here we have a question from Lorraine Trapp is asking, I don't think Donna has a chance of being found innocent in trial. Don't you think her best move would be to plead to a lesser crime? Well, normally that's something that if somebody doesn't have a shot at all at winning the case, then I think it's upon me to first make sure that there is no chance. I leave no stone unturned to try to come up with what scenario, best case scenario to win for my client is. And if there's no chance at all and the evidence is so overwhelming in a situation like you have here, I would definitely be looking to try to cut some kind of deal, talking my client into that, cutting a deal. And the obvious thing is, is there other crimes you can help solve? Or in this case, if you have someone that's a co-conspirator, then obviously is there other people that haven't been charged yet that you can flip on? And so here, what's really unique about it is that we have other family members. And so flipping on family members is just really a whole different animal. And it's something that is not really that common. And I would say that, And so the chances of flipping are much lessened if that happens, but it's not to say that it can't happen. But the other unique dynamic you have in terms of whether she cooperates or not is this issue of her being 73 years old. And so if she cooperates, agrees to a lesser charge, maybe that's something that the government will entertain. But in the end, it's not going to matter with her age at 73. She's probably going to do at least 10 years for anything they would cut her a deal on. So the odds of her living past that and what kind of grueling conditions she'll have in prison at that age, I think she's looking at as sort of like a death sentence. So I think in her mind, she's just thinking they got to pick a better jury, and she's going to trust Rushbaum. And it was just a bad jury. It was a bad panel, not just that jury, but that whole panel was contaminated. Not just the 12. And so they're banking on. I think she's really believing the fact that she can talk her way out of this, just like Charlie. And so that's why I think that her move is not really going to matter that much because they're not going to agree to something where she's going to be out and living, after a couple years in prison and being out walking the streets. They're not going to do that kind of deal. So they got her life without parole. She will go down on that. And so there's no point in really dealing with her at this point to anything that's, that minor of a slap on the wrist kind of thing. So I just don't think she's going to be inclined to want to flip on either Harvey or Wendi. So I think that's really, although it's, um, a possibility, it's just not realistically probable that that's going to happen. So, Carla Stewart's asking, what date is Donna's new trial? We don't have a new date yet. We just have the pretrial conference management hearing, which is going to be in front of the judge. And this probably just going to be zoomed in by Rashbaum. The local attorney will probably be there. And they probably won't even have Wendi there. Donna there. So, yeah, and I agree with Maya that Georgia hasn't even offered a deal. Probably, I mean, I think normally prosecutors should talk about cutting a deal and stuff like that with defense. But sometimes if it's just so obvious there's not going to be a deal, then a lot of times prosecutors don't do that. I've seen that before as well. And sometimes prosecutors, I've seen it where they basically want a case to go to trial because they're facing reelection and they want to have their name in quotes and face in the newspapers and on TV and stuff like that. So a lot of times they'll really deal with defendants a lot harsher if they especially if they got a murder case. So that's just what I've seen before. So I don't think it has anything to do with that for the state attorney's office. So I'm sure they got enough cases there, and the basic evidence here is such a slam dunk win. And I know that the state attorney Jack Campbell is facing reelection, but excuse me, I think that his he's solid enough. He's going to get reelected. I don't see that being an issue. So so here's a question. I won't try to pronounce your name, but isn't the case harder with Donna since the defense needs to raise doubt that Donna believed that Charlie was extorted? She's less directly exposed than him. Well, I would say that Charlie had more involvement in connecting to the middlemen and the hitmen, ultimate hitmen, but no, she's just as involved. So there's no way that she's gonna have doubts that can be raised where they're not gonna be able to say that with any credibility she was not involved in this. And I think she even mentioned the fact that she was involved in this, right? It's about you and me, is what she told Charlie about what the bump was about. And so there's also other conversations about the bump that were not brought up in trial. They may even go into that some more to try to show her involvement in that. So no, there's not any reasonable defense and anything that they can poke holes at that are going to have anything to do with credibility and trustworthiness that their defense theory is gonna fly. DF is asking if whether I think Charlie knows deep down Donna has no chance of winning. I that's a good question. I think I think it may cross his mind, but I don't think he's going to verbalize that at all. And so, yeah, it's deep down, he probably realizes that it could be the same thing. I think he maybe doesn't want to really go there. He's probably trying to have some cognitive dissonance about it. Catherine Mooney's asking, why does Rashbaum want this trial? Well, he's been working with, think about it. He's been working with Donna for like 9 years almost, and he's been her attorney for such a long period of time while he's representing Charlie. Obviously, Harvey and Donna had to go with this Marcel Descalzo down in Miami for the initial depositions that the state attorney's office is trying to do. But after that happened and she came up here and didn't do so good at that hearing, then obviously Donna decided to cut her off, and Rashbaum was done with Charlie. So at that point, it was ready for Rashbaum to resume his role. So that's why I expected Rashbaum to get back on and think about all the conversations they've had during Charlie's whole year and a half in confinement. So I think that was just sort of a natural thing that Donna would have gravitated to. And think about it, for Rashbaum's sake, he's making a lot more money representing both these folks. I just don't think it's worthwhile, the potential conflicts from in a situation like I would be in if I had this in Texas, for example. I would never represent two co-defendants that even if they're tried one after the other and the first one was convicted, I would never want to do that. There's just too much potential for conflict, even if families don't want to roll on each other. You never know if it is possible. So I just would never want to have that, because if one decides to roll, then the attorney would have to be removed from both, representing both. That's the way ethics works in my 4 states of licensure, and I would assume that's the same way in other states as well. Patricia Happ is saying that she sees in Connecticut they include under penalty of perjury in the oath their witnesses who decides how the oath is worded. That's really done by states. They have it all already scripted out how the oath is supposed to happen normally, and it's pretty much all customary to be done the same way in the states, and also the federal courts have a certain way, and also the military courts have it a certain way. So some of them have like "So help you God" as mentioning at the end, and others don't. And so, and some of them have evolved over time as well. And if they don't say "So help me God," then they'll say something like, "Do you swear or affirm?" Um, and just leave it at that. So here have a question from Judy. What if Charlie flips on Wendi to save his mom? Yeah, I just don't. Let's see, if to save his mom, how's he going to save his mom? I guess if they're gonna cut her a lighter sentence for her, potentially, but how light of a sentence would that be? And so I think I don't think they're going to get his mom a good enough sentence to make it worthwhile. So I think if Donna dies in prison, then I think that would be the most opportune time for Charlie to say, you know what, I feel like I'm never going to get out of here. He may wait till his appeals are exhausted or something like that, but I think the biggest impetus to have him decide to flip, if he does, would be after, assuming Donna would die while he's pending appeal or after appeal, whatever point if he survives her, then that would be the most likely time, if at all. Excuse me. Peyton James is saying, I see a lot of Jeff bashing and more support of Wendy's innocence lately. Anybody else notice this? Yeah, so I've mentioned this, I think, last time, that they really are paying a lot of money, and you can even have with AI now, you could have basically one person be hired, and they could have hundreds and hundreds of folks making derogatory statements, and they could be paying YouTube channelers, they could be paying attorneys to make really outlandish stuff, pro Wendi, anti Jeff Lacoste, and it's just really, I think it's really just goes to show the desperation, because they realize this is coming down the pike, and they're scrambling and doing everything they can to try to influence the prosecution team to think that they don't have a case against her and they're going to lose. And there's all these people doubting and all that kind of stuff. So all these naysayers, as a prosecutor, you know your evidence, you know what evidence that's going to convict somebody, and you just do your job. And the evidence is going to speak for itself. You just need to get the right evidence before the jury, get in enough detail, and a jury will do the right thing and they will convict Donna, just like they did Charlie. And they'll also go after Wendi and Harvey as well. So they just got to keep firing away, and they're gonna pick them off one by one and be successful at that. So, but yeah, I think that they're spending a lot of money to try to discredit the key witnesses for the government. And think about it: why would these channels be trying to discredit Jeff Lacasse? What would be their motive to try to discredit him? Do they really think that Wendi is innocent? I mean, Jeff has provided such great testimony against these other numerous trials. So he's already done it in the Katie 1 trial. He's already testified in Katie 2 trial. And he's already testified now in Charlie's trial. And he's also going to be testifying in Donna's trial. And so, excuse me, if you stop, think about what he said and how damning that is, and they're just not gonna be able to discredit him with any amount of degree of credibility. And I even saw there was some channel that said that the Rashbaum cross-examination on Jeff Lacasse was like the cross-examination of the year. And I just thought how preposterous that was, because they obviously don't know about the trial, and the fact that everything that prosecution presented was basically, in essence, a slam dunk win against Charlie. And let's say you didn't even need Jeff Lacasse, they probably would have convicted anyway. I think that's how strong the evidence is. But Jeff Lacasse, he's the one that really helped solve the crime from the get go. And so that's why I think they know he's an extra one that's unimpeachable with any amount of credibility. And so that's what they're trying to do, is hopefully try to scare the prosecution away from trying to go forward on this otherwise very strong case. So yeah, it's just really bizarre. And like I say, there's naysayers, just like there's naysayers, like I mentioned, about the Murdo case. And so you just got to cast those aside and realize that in any particular case, no matter how guilty and overwhelming the evidence is, there's going to be a lot of folks out there that they just sort of like ruffling the feathers and getting people stirred up, and they probably don't even know anything about the case other than generic details enough to just try to stir the pot. So I call them agitators and instigators. They're just trying to you got some of those, but then you also got paid troll types as well by the defense. There's no doubt that's going on by the defense. And so why they're doing that, to try to influence the prosecution, I don't know, because I think the prosecution is just looking at that. It's sort of like a swatting gnats. I don't think they're going to pay any attention to that, nor should they, because it's all just, like I say, it's just manufactured noise. Yeah. So this kind of question here, from, I won't try to say your name again, but it says you've outlined why Wendy is guilty, and I believe she is, but there's not a single piece of evidence that she furthered the conspiracy. Isn't that a problem? There is for Charlie, Donna. There is what evidence of a conspiracy? I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, the end of that, but um, well, first of all, conspiracy is not the major charge. Murder is, and under murder as a principle, in Florida, just like as a co-principal in other jurisdictions. So whether they call it a principal or co-principal, all you have to do is something that was um, to assist the actual crime. So it could be something as minor as making a phone call. It could be setting up an appointment. It could be helping framing somebody. Just like, what did Donna say? Excuse me. What did Georgia say about what Wendi had done in the closing argument when she's prosecuting Charlie? She said that Wendi had framed Jeff Lacasse. So why would somebody frame somebody and date him for 8 months just to frame him, and for no reason? You frame an innocent person if you're part of a guilty party. So that's really common sense kind of stuff there. And for acts in furtherance of a conspiracy, if you have an agreement, a common scheme among co-conspirators, not every single person from the states I'm licensed in and the courts I've practiced in, not every single person needs to have an act in furtherance of the conspiracy. So I would say that you're misguided on the law here. So you don't need to have anything she's done in furtherance of the conspiracy. But what do we know? She helped set up Jeff Lacasse. She also, the hitman also knew when Dan Markel was leaving town that they had to do an urgent job, that he was flying out of town. How would they know he's flying out of town on Saturday? And they had to get the murder done before he left out of town. So these are the kind of signature kind of details that they're just too overwhelming. And then, of course, how would she know that to go by the crime scene and do that crime scene inspection a little over an hour after the murder? So unless you knew ahead of time, and think about what Charlie even said. Charlie was really getting mad about her, and what I believe he was um, angry at her because I think he's blaming her for why he's convicted because of her stupidity of going by the crime scene there. And he used the term 1 in a million. It's like 1 in a million odds that she just hadn't be going that way. And he kept on harping about the fact that this wasn't a shortcut. And he mentions she went by like 4 or 5 liquor stores to go to the one that's way out there on Trescott. And he doesn't even he talks about how far out of the way it is. I mean, basically it's an additional 40 minutes out of the way just to get a bottle of liquor when you're going to go to lunch, where there's liquor stores every which way you turn up there at that restaurant. She was having lunch, pre-planned lunch with some of her girlfriends. So anyway, I could go on and on about all the other details that show she was involved beforehand. So I would say just look at what we've said for the details of things she's done. And I probably need to come up with a better list. I do have a better list that I did talk about on YouTube. Um, uh, that was after the quick one I did with John. So yeah, there's a lot more detailed evidence to support that. There's no doubt that there was involvement there that a jury would find. Debbie Martins is asking, do I think Donna may have wanted to get arrested fleeing because she knew she'd be arrested anyway, and then can blame Rashbaum for saying to flee? I do think that's there's someone I've talked to that's a clinical psychologist that thinks maybe she just want to get it over with. Like, why drag this out in agony? If I'm going to get arrested now. And so almost there's almost like a like you cannot take the suspense anymore. So just if you're going to shoot me now kind of thing, and quit tormenting me. So yeah, I think there could be some truth to that. I don't know for sure, obviously, but psychologically speaking, a lot of people do that when they're just basically being tormented by the drip, 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 wondering like, at what point am I going to get arrested? So you know what? If you flee the country, that's the best sign. Between now and the couple days from the time you got the ticket and you're going to the airport, if you get on the plane and it actually takes off, they're probably not going to turn the plane around. Possibly it could, but maybe they wouldn't even ask to do that. And so if you'd have made it to Dubai with Harvey, they probably would have spent years trying to get her back and spending some big bucks to whatever government she went to. And they could have paid them off, try to set up a dental practice, and maybe try to bribe officials or something like that. So, I mean, there's a potential that maybe they would have been able to apprehend them and bring them back for justice. So, and like she said to Charlie, they're coming after him one at a time. So if she really believes that, why not speed it up rather than delay the agony? So yeah, that could be very well. As far as blaming Rushbaum for saying to flee, yeah, we don't know what he said to her, assuming that was something that he did tell her, where he said like, well, if you leave, you could it could speed up your arrest. If you don't leave, it may never happen. You just never know. But in any event, I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic if she tries to point the finger at Rashbaum in the trial, because then that obviously is destroying the credibility of your defense counsel. So that sort of puts you in a conflict with your client. So I think that rather than him being removed, I think they have such a close relationship, though. I think they're just going to maybe not bring that up. And I don't think the prosecution wants to bring that up to try to drive a wedge between the attorney and the client, the defendant there. So I think that's probably just going to be avoided. and not be mentioned at trial, that was something that, was discussed with counsel. But I don't know, a lot of weird stuff in Florida. So it's you can't be that accurate on some of this unique stuff. I would have never imagined it, like say an attorney representing two co-accused in a murder case. Maya's asking, do I think if any of them accepts a deal, there will be a battle of the deal between Donna and Charlie? No, Charlie, he's not going to get a deal per se. If he wants to flip, they're not going to cut a deal. From what I've seen, like in federal courts, you don't get a deal to reduce your sentence until after you've already cooperated with the government, provide them interviews and depositions and testified at trial. So that could be a drawn out process before any type of considerations given to reduce a sentence. And maybe they don't want to reduce a sentence if it's got life without parole. I don't even know if the statute would allow a reduction for that per se. It probably would, but I don't. The prosecutors may not want to cut a deal with Charlie. They may say we're not going to cut a deal with you. We made it, and we'll decide afterwards how much assistance you provide to the state, and then make a recommendation there. Maybe there'd be some kind of provision where they can make there probably could be something where, uh, well, I should say there probably isn't something where it can set aside the sentence for somebody's pleading guilty. So it's just really rare to have someone cooperate like that after they've denied being involved and then flip like that. It's just really sort of I think not such a good thing. I think it's better for me. What I do is when I have a clients that are overwhelmingly guilty like that, I'd rather cut a deal with them in the beginning. But anyway, these are the defendant has the option in America where they want to go to trial or not, where they want to cut a deal or not, and where they want to testify or not, and also whether they want to make a statement on in their sentencing or not, if it goes to sentencing, and everything else is the attorney's decision. And so what tactics they're going to use, what defense theory they're going to use, all that kind of stuff. That is supposed to be the decision of the attorney. Obviously, you want input of your client, but ultimately, it's up to the attorney to use their best efforts to zealously represent the client's interests. So, after all, the attorney should know the law more than the client. Mr. Beck says, "Who paid for Katie's 3 lawyers?" Well, there was a hearing on that with the previous judge on the case, and not the one previous to Judge Wheeler. I forget his name, but he had like an in-camera hearing after they had some arguments in open court, and ultimately decided that what the defense attorneys were presenting to him was satisfactory to him to believe that that these weren't paid for. These attorneys weren't paid for by the Adelsons, but as I've said on other podcasts, that ultimately, you could set up an LLC and create some dummy type of accounts and this kind of stuff, and be pretty easy to trick a judge like that if that was done all behind the scenes, and the lawyers don't claim to have any knowledge of that. So that's something that if they didn't know about this and it's presented to them in their office, and if this was done behind the scenes by Charlie, then I would say that's something that's very much possible. And in any event, there's just some really strange stuff going on with representation of uh, of Katie with regard to those 3 attorneys. Is just really the most strange, bizarre thing to have the worst outcome that you could ever possibly imagine, being offered to walk out of jail free, and you get life without parole, and uh, and your attorneys act shocked about it. Although I will say again that the Chris Lacasse, his reaction and closing argument, it just like he had doom all over his body was exhibiting doom and gloom. And excuse me. So throat's a little dry here still, so bear with me, please. Thanks, Dr. Kinsella. Mandy Strong, I agree with you. No jury will ever buy that ridiculous defense, no matter where the jury's picked from. And I would say, bring in Robert Adelson, the Honorable Adelson from up in New York area, that can talk about how weird they're acting towards him and how they wouldn't talk. Donna wouldn't. I'm sure Donna was a part of it. That you can't talk about the murder of Dan Markell and his family, and just how they basically acted so guilty. I'm sure that he decided that he wants nothing to do with them. So okay, C. Malone is making a statement that I feel like I want to comment on. Is saying Wendi has some very good counsel. Okay, very expensive counsel, but even this high priced counsel that Trump has defending him in multiple jurisdictions for multiple felony charges. Look, he's coming down to represent her, and she basically did such a bad of testifying that she was lying under oath, and the prosecutor brought an FBI agent to rebut her story. So even this high priced lawyer cannot keep her to talk the truth, could not keep her on track, and she got caught up in all these lies. I mean, every time she testifies and they ask her more and more questions, more and more lies come out. So um, that's I surely wouldn't want my client to look that bad on the witness stand. So it's I don't think that's a very good job, if you ask me. Tracy Coker is asking, how can they think they can win with with extortion, with the jail calls, wiretaps? How do they explain that away? Yeah, so you know what? Sometimes what I've done before is when the defense has such a ludicrous story, the devil's in the details, right? On any kind of case, to get your best chance of winning, you got to go enough details. That's how many times I've beaten my opposing counsel, whether it's been a prosecutor, defense attorney. They just sort of look at the file that's been given them by the investigators, and they never do their own homework or ask other questions or go out to the crime scene. And there's just a whole number of things that the real detailed, focused trial attorney will look at to perfect their case that they're going to represent their client on. And so, what I thought was something that I would consider doing against Charlie, for example, if I had a case like that, when he just casually sat back there on the witness stand and all glibly and just acted so really cocky and arrogant, talked about how this extortion thing went down, and it's sort of something that if you don't do it the right way and frame it the right way, then it can sort of backfire on you, like the glove thing with O.J. Simpson. But like in Charlie's particular case, I would, when he's acting like he was intimidated and threatened, all that kind of stuff, I would just go into the whole litany of details and ask him to even rehearse. Can you demonstrate to us where exactly, and stand up, if you, and first I'd get him to commit to, like, was um was Katie standing up or sitting down? What was the distance between them? Like all those kind of details of this conversation. We don't know any of those details of how that went down. And so what you do is, no liar has a good enough memory to fill in all the details. And since we know this was a lie, what you do is just pick apart the details, and then you come back to it at different times. And actually how the whole conversation went and the detailed words, and then you ask him to describe it. Can you imitate how she acted so threatening to you that you thought you needed acted on this, and then you cannot call the police? How do you act that out? How would he act like Katie is so threatening and intimidating that he would have to, you know, be an actor and try to create this monster type threat from Katie, little Katie? So something like that. I've used before, and witnesses just crumble, and they realize they've been caught and they've been had, and you can just see it all over their face. So, excuse me, Charlie's so glib, he would have tried to fake it, and it would just look so unnatural and phony. And anyway, just I think it's just something that's really drives a stake through the defense even that much more. So, don't know if they would ever consider something like that. That's not something that a lot of attorneys use, but I think it's very good to do sort of a reenactment like that when you know it's absolutely something that the defense is going to just blunder and stumble over. So yeah, so they cannot explain this away at all. And they could do have some jail calls and whatnot where, it does make Donna sound guilty and stuff like that. So where she's saying they're coming after us one at a time and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm sure there's a lot more as well on different digital evidence they've recovered. And keep in mind, she's also talking on the phone. Well, I'm sure they're monitoring everything she's been saying since she's been arrested on 13th of November. So they're going to have probably a lot more. I don't think she's going to be able to keep her keep a lid on different conversations that are incriminating, like Charlie apparently was able to do, because we didn't hear the prosecution bring out any evidence of things that he had said while he's in confinement there in Leon County Jail. Okay, this question comes up more than often than I would imagine. From Carol Tell is asking, can Charlie Adelson still be a dentist in prison, help the inmates that need dental attention, or is his license automatically terminated? I saw some document that his license has already been terminated, but even if it hadn't, let's say, to be a dentist, what does a dentist need? They need sharp instruments, things that could be used to take offense and injure or kill or maim prison guards. And so sharp instruments like that, they're not going to have those as something that the inmates can have access to. And think about it, you also need needles, painkillers, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you're just asking for a whole lot of trouble from inmates, giving them needles with painkillers and all that kind of stuff. So no, that would never happen. And so Charlie probably is bragging though about how he is a dentist and stuff like that. And so anyway, I'm not sure that's going to do him any favors, though. They may automatically assume he's got money and stuff like that, and they probably already heard about his reputation. So he's going to be transferred here in another week or so to a more of a permanent jail location somewhere in the state. And so I think his reputation will probably precede him before he gets there. So that's when I think there's going to be a lot of stuff that he's going to be really shooken up about of the way he's talked to and threatened, and how the jail economy works there, where everything is sort of a drug deal and with threats and whatnot. So, so Christine is asking, don't you think the way Donna presented herself at that hearing showed she is in a state of irretrievable denial? Yeah, she does really look like she's going to be a fighter on this thing, and I'm hearing different conflicting reports. On some reports, I hear how she's actively, being really feisty in jail and defiant of sorts. And other folks say that she's rapidly decomposing and having to see a psychologist or some kind of mental health counselor in there to try to keep her bearings straight. So I don't know what the truth is, but I think that having that sooner trial date in the next 5 months or less will definitely help her at least look at see light at the end of the tunnel in her mind, that she's going to be getting out of jail real soon, and so that'll help her keep stronger. But if she had a year and a half to go, I mean, there's no way she would last, in my estimation. Yeah, so Karina Joy, I just answered that question about when Charlie be assigned to state prison. He's been in the DOC for over 2 months. Um, Well, I think that, yeah, it can take a 2-month period, roughly to process them. And they go through a litany to get the physicals, mental health assessments, and things of that nature to try to see where they best fit in. And of course, him being a murder one convict, he's going to be with the most violent of the violent. And so he's going to be transferred around some really career violent type of people. Because most people like Charlie, I would say in prison, are not the type that just got a one-time zap, one-time felony conviction of violence. Normally, folks that are in there for violence, they got a career of violence from the time they're young, probably juveniles, and they're in and out of prison up to the time they get then like a life sentence kind of thing. So yeah, he's in there going to be in there with the worst of the worst. Riley H, excuse me, is saying if Donna gets a retrial, will she have to remain in jail just like Katie did? Yeah, that's what would I believe would happen. They're just like Katie. Katie was stuck in the Leon County Jail there for a really long time. They had COVID delays as well, so yeah, it took her a while to get to court a second time. Sarah May is asking if Charlie ends up being extorted while in prison and talks about it on phone calls. Do you think any authority will care to try to stop it from happening? Um, well, let's see. So I guess you're talking about inmates extorting him, and he's talking about it on the phone to other folks, and if they're listening and that kind of stuff, then um, it depends what the extortion is. I think a lot of that's just routine. And if it's more routine type of stuff, they may not get involved. If it's like saying, "Hey, get us your commissary for this or that. Otherwise, we're going to put the hurt on you," or something like that. I mean, they may not act on something like that, but they're very understaffed here in Florida prisons. If you go to YouTube and just type in Florida prisons, you can see a lot of different things, and it's really scary. A lot of that stuff that you see. So it's not going to be a fun place at all. He's going to have to sleep with his eyes wide open and be constantly worrying about someone trying to do something to bring harm his way. Leslie M is asking if Donna decides to play it demure at trials, is there any way they can bring in the arraignment video to show the contrast in her demeanor? They can do stuff like that, but I've never seen prosecutors that do that. I think they could have done it with like Charlie, because Charlie said something like "good" when they read his indictment to him, and I think it was indictment they're reading, and it looked like he mouthed the word "good," but most prosecutors don't look at that kind of stuff. But it's a creative way to try to show other things that the defendant has done to indicate their guilt. Okay, beautiful Rose is saying Charlie seems surprised that when he drove by the crime scene, could he have not heard of that? Yeah, he has. I think it just really sunk in that what are the odds she would do that? And I think what he heard about Georgia hitting that home was just is driving him nuts. And think about it, he's going to blame other people, and he didn't want to blame his lawyer. So what's he going to do? He's going to blame somebody else. So who's the easy target? Wendi. And and he was driving home all these points way beyond what the prosecutor even was mentioning in some ways. So I think that I think he's just blaming her really for the way things went down, and and I think Donna somewhat agreed with him, but then she tried to get the topic steered off of Wendi, and she remember she made the comment like they're trying to go after us one at a time, and so I think she was messaging him basically saying, "Put a lid on it. Don't be talking about Wendi because um, they're not done just going after you being the last one. They're coming after the rest of us as well." Okay, Stuart Donaldson is asking, do I think Wendy's text, which Donna read out on the hot mic jail call, where Wendi used awful legalese type language will come back to haunt her when Wendi is eventually tried? Potentially, they could use that. I think the one of the key takeaways for me was when she said something along the lines of, "I'm not guilty because I didn't have anything to do with Danny's death." And I think that's a statement of hers that I think is indicative of a conscious mind of guilt involved in this, because for number one, she's not saying the murder; she calls it the death. And so I think somebody that was um, highly enraged the fact that a loved one would get murdered, I think you would use the word murder, and you don't use the word killed; you just use the word death. And so I think that's trying to downplay it like that. It's a consciousness of guilt kind of thing because she knows she was involved in that and a family member was involved. And and she's using the term not guilty. I mean, an innocent person does not say comment like that, right? Didn't have anything to do with it. Also makes it sound like Charlie had something to do with it. So in a way, she's actually pointing the finger at Charlie. And the more guilt you have among all of them, the more likely you are to get a conviction against all of them. So I think that's exactly what happened with how they presented all the evidence against Charlie that included Donna and Wendi. Because think about it, they all acted in concert. They all had a role to play. They all were instrumental, as well as Charlie, in making sure this murder happened. So with that, Sharon Eisenstein is asking, does Donna have any chance of a change of entity due to media coverage? No, I would say she doesn't. I think that it has to be so pervasive. And from what I'm hearing, other attorneys down there in Florida, that it's really a rare thing. And this case has nowhere gotten the kind of media coverage among locals where they'd know about it. And think about the murder happens now it's going on 10 years ago. So that's not something that's going to be fresh in a lot of people's minds where they're going to know so much about it and have such a strong and flexible opinion that they won't be able to sit for a jury. So I don't see that happening at all. MM is asking, did the cops follow Wendy's car from the crime scene? Is that how they found her at the restaurant? No, I think I don't know exactly how. I haven't seen anything directly about it, but I know Judy has mentioned that that they did some kind of cell phone checking and pinged her to see where she was at or something. I don't know where she got that from. I can't remember. But if, Judy, if you're on here, if you want to answer that, please, where you got that from. So Chandler Bullock says, I think it's Charlie's way of flipping on Wendi without being obvious. Yeah, I mean he is venting. He's just seething mad, and he's gonna blame his what he looks at as his unsophisticated dumb sister for doing such an action, because I think that was not part of the script. Her driving to the crime scene was something that they never had discussed when they were down there in Miami the 2 weeks before the week of Dan Markel's murder, to be able to plan this out, rehearse it out, script it out, because everything acted really scripted from the time that everything about how Wendi acted there with Detective Isom to calling up her mom and all that kind of stuff. I mean, everything just sounded so scripted and rehearsed, and I think that would come across to the jury. So yeah, you definitely, I think, are correct on this thing here. Cindy Collins is asking, did you hear Wendy say she didn't have time to shower because she needed to get to the liquor store, get gas, get glue for one of the boys' toys, need to get to the crime scene? Yeah. Yeah, I think she was really nervous about this thing. She had a lot hanging on her head. She had her bar license. She could have lost her job. Yeah, things were going to get real ugly real fast in the coming days. So with Dan alive, all that would have happened to put her in a huge state of fear. But with Dan eliminated, all that would have gone away, and it did go away. Mandy Strong is asking if I think Donna's counsels will recommend that she not take the stand. I think in a case like this, she's going to do exactly what Charlie did. She's going to take the stand. She's going to say how she wasn't a part of this, and this is all just new to her, and she's just trying to help an extorted son, and all this kind of song and dance. So it's not going to fly. CC is asking, do I think Charlie will get protected camo he was talking about, or will he be in segregation? He won't be able to stand it. I mean, I think if some threats get significant enough, they may stick him in isolation. But like when they stuck him in segregation initially, when he got to Leon County Jail, he couldn't stand it. I mean, he has to be around talking to people, having them listen to him, and all that kind of stuff. He's got to be the maestro. So I just don't think that it's gonna be worse for him. I think he'd be rather facing the threats and extortions by being out in general pop among those violent guys. So that's my thoughts on that. So his performance is saying with the Adelsons dropping like flies, I wonder how the boys are processing it all. I bet they feel a little bit more free to finally grieve. Yeah, I think they probably have been um, so well controlled and told what to think that I think that yeah, I don't think they're really willing to open that idea up of what the truth, how sick and sinister it could be, and I'm sure they're just being told bad things about Tallahassee people, and that's why your mom left there, and these bad people decided to extort Charlie, and the jury up there stupid. I mean, all the same kind of stuff that Charlie was saying, why he got convicted is what they're, I'm sure, telling the boys. But they have a probably real abbreviated version, and they probably say, "Don't ever talk about this again in the house." Is what probably happens. Jim McNutty's asking if can they use the part of the butt dial call after Charlie hung up? Yeah, I mean Donna's words could be used against her, and so I think that I think that's something they may not try to bring into evidence. I don't know if it's that indicative of anything. I think it's in terms of the actual email or text, whatever Wendy said. I think they already have that as well. So that would be something that I think they'd rather bring that against Wendy to show how scripted she was in her response to this. Yeah, Jennifer Ray's saying something seen in previous months. I caught that too. What woman goes to lunch with friends without showering? Yet she had time to go to the opposite direction to get bourbon. Yeah, I mean, it's just that whole thing is. She looked like she's ready to go out work in her garden, and it doesn't look like she's going out to eat lunch with her friends. So that's more something that ladies would understand more than men. But I think you guys are onto something there. Okay, I just had a question there. I didn't grab it. It had to do with could they use Wendy's? Sorry, I can't. The question had to do with don't know where it's at now, but the question had to do with could Wendy's statement to Detective Eisen be used against her? And there's a question about whether they read her rights. No, they didn't read her rights, and she was free to go. She was not in custody, quote unquote, and so she was free to go at any time. That really what triggers the Miranda rights. So she was not given Miranda rights. They did like a type of a Miranda type warning and consent form that she signed off on to have her phone examined. But aside from reading her rights to remain silent and all that kind of stuff, I did not see that, and so they did not think of her suspect. They're just that she was there for an interview. So a lot of people call that interview an interrogation, and that's completely wrong. In criminal law, interrogation is what law enforcement does when they're trying to get a defendant to confess or a key witness to confess. And what happens is an interview they're more on a fishing expedition. An interrogation is more of a closure mechanism, and they're trying to elicit a confession. So now an interview can turn into an interrogation, but when you're fishing for information, even if you're like saying things like, well, explain that doesn't make any sense, stuff like that's not really an interrogation. They're just trying to flesh out the truth at that point and resolve any inconsistencies without actually thinking or knowing enough to get them to confess. But if even if you don't have, let's say, that strong of a buildup of evidence against them, if you feel like you're really making progress and you want to turn an interview into interrogation, then go ahead and do that. The downside of it is like if the more you turn it into interrogation, the more likely the the person being interviewed or interrogated is likely to ask for counsel, and so you're basically going to shut down the interview. So it's easier to be nice to them and to build up all these interviews, and then you go in for um, the interrogation at the very end. Like when you've built your case against that person, you're trying to get them to do a confession, and you've got them nailed. So we're no matter what they say, even if they don't admit it or if they invoke, you're ready to go to trial after that. So Joe India is saying Wendy stated in her interview with police that she and Charlie were very close, yet she never speaks to them while he's incarcerated, didn't support him while at trial. My thoughts. Yeah, I mean, I think that she was realized he's already being arrested, and the more she talks to him, the more likely she's going to be arrested. She probably was told that by counsel that Charlie's going to be saying things to you, and he can't control his mouth, and so you're best off not talking to him at all. And just like that same thing's going on, I'm sure, with Donna. I mean, I doubt there's going to be any calls between Donna and Wendi. I think Wendi just wants nothing new ever again talking to Charlie, and I think she'll probably never talk again to her mother either. So I think she's that scared about what could happen. And think about that message she sent her mom about she couldn't even say, gosh, that's terrible what happened to Charlie, that terrible jury. He's innocent. I love my brother. We got to support him. And so, I mean, she had no concern, no comment whatsoever. I mean, it was just like cold, very cold and icy. And then she um, used the excuse that she's not supposed to talk about this case. Well, you're just talking about your brother's situation of being a convicted murderer and having a little empathy and sharing in the misery with your parents. And so, well, no, she wanted to act like nothing happened. So, yeah, that's just the kind of thing that guilty people do. So, TP is asking, did you notice the stare down that Luis Rivera gave to Charlie at his trial? Yeah, I did notice that. I wasn't there. I only saw it on camera, but John was there. My brother John, he would have seen that. Josephine is asking, will Charlie share a cell and who gets the upper bunk? I don't know um, who you would share a cell with. Normally, I guess it depends on what kind of state prisons they have. I'm not sure what they do in Florida where they have two per per cell or not. Okay, Joy Matt is talking about the synagogue, how they live streamed the bar mitzvah for one of the, I'll call them Markel boys, and but they took it down afterwards, and then other little boys from the same day it's still up. So that's interesting. Yeah, there's probably some complaints about that. Wesley John Holmes is saying that the Adelsons think that if they didn't pull the trigger, then they're not involved. I'm sure they really believe that. Yeah, I think that's some of the cognitive dissonance that they're trying to mentally keep themselves positive about this kind of thing. But yeah, deep down, they know they're guilty. But I think they're trying to do that cognitive dissonance spin. Yeah, thanks, Paul. Yeah, I've been fighting this bronchitis stuff here for several weeks now, but I'm really not coughing like this. It's just the fact that I'm doing so much talking here. Margaret's asking, does Florida train inmates? That can happen with like interstate compact between states, but don't know if that would happen here. It's hard to say. I'm not going to speculate on that. MM is saying, is Wendy's over paranoia be an indication to go? Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're paying an attorney $1,000 an hour. I mean, the many hours she's paid for his advice. Just think about it. Is that something an innocent person really does when uh, when they're not doing anything to assist and helping prosecute the folks that murdered your boy's father? You're hiding behind a lawyer, really? So Suzanne Schultz is saying, will Charlie stand trial at Donna's trial? I think you mean be a witness. I mean, that's potentially I think a possibility, but I don't think they're going to use him at all. I think Donna's, if they want to say he was extorted or something like that, maybe defense will call him, and I think that would be really a crazy episode. I would invite that if I was a prosecutor. Bertha C's asking if I think Donna's defense will use extortion again. I mean, that's what Rashbaum said happened. So if he's going to reinvent that story, then I'd be surprised. But anything's possible with these Adelsons and their lawyers. City Girl's asking, I wonder what happened to that bullet bourbon she purchased that morning. Well, it probably was in her impounded with her car, and then they probably eventually turned the car over and the bourbon as well. They probably just had photographs of it and they turned it back over because after all, she got cleared after about 40 some minutes as a suspect. They would have turned everything back over to her except the phone. I don't know how long it took them to clear the phone. Maybe they scanned it and were able to do that within that 5 hours she was in the interview. I'm not sure. Beach Sanity is saying she knows a hammer's fixing to come down on her, so that's why she's distancing herself. Yeah, I mean that's another way to say it. I agree. And I think she's why she hasn't fled the country. I think she's just maybe trying to be in such a state of cognitive dissonance that she's uh she's thinking, well, at least I have freedom until my mom goes to trial. Okay, Cat Love Dreaming Peach says, "Do you really believe Wendy will never speak to Charlie or Donna again? I mean, unless it's through maybe a recording through Rashbaum or something like that. But they should not be talking as inmates. She's not allowed to talk to Charlie as a co-accused. I would say I'd be shocked if the Florida prison system allowed co-accused and one of them's already convicted, one's pending trial to be able to just to talk. So I think that would be not allowed at all. So could there be notes passed through counsel or family members, something like that? That's always a possibility. But I think them talking on the phone to each other directly and not in violation of prison rules, I'd be shocked. And then you ask, why wouldn't Donna and Charlie get to speak after Donna's convicted? Well, because inmates are not allowed. The guys and the gals are separate, and I'm sure they'd keep them in a separate prison anyway. They probably have a female only prison in Florida. And so they're not, inmates don't get to talk like that in most state prisons. So I'd be shocked if they allow that to happen. So I really think they're not going to be talking again. Yeah, but Debbie Gibby says, I just think Wendy hasn't talked to Charlie since April of 2022 and won't for life now. She wants nothing to do with him. Right. I mean, he's toxic. She wants nothing to do to think about Tallahassee because automatically that's going to put her in a state of fear, thinking, oh no, am I next? I don't want to go down that down that road of thought. Kathy S is saying, why wouldn't Sigfredo, Katie have turned way before on Charlie, the family, for deal possibility? Yeah, I mean this is like one of the biggest things as well. I mean, I think that the attorney sounded like they believed in her story so much, even after 11-1 vote of guilt and Katie's first trial, that they thought that it's worth going to trial the second time. And but like I say, it surely didn't look like Chris Lacasse believed that they're going to win that case. It looked like he's turning into Absolutely. He was absolutely in state of shock and fear, and he knew dread. I would say dread and gloom that this thing's going down in a hurry. And sure enough, it did. Okay, Skylander's saying the Mosaic restaurant. So that's where Wendy was going to have lunch with her girlfriends there, right after Dan was murdered. Was considered high-end cuisine, and her clothes were not appropriate. That's I'm not familiar with that restaurant, so if you have that kind of insight, that's interesting. Yeah, that's another indicator. Hey, Mona's asking if I've ever represented any clients as delusional as Adelson's, and if so, how do you handle them? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of clients don't want to admit to that, and I just got to study the evidence and be able to point out things to them. And sometimes it takes time. You got to develop trust with them, and you need to eventually start saying, asking questions like, look, here's, and what I do is I don't try to make it look like I'm being judgmental with the client, but what I try to make them do is show them how the prosecutor's going to be looking at this. And, I maybe will do like a mock cross examination on them and say, this is what the prosecutor's going to ask you. And then I'll stand up and I'll start, really wire brushing them with tough questions, and they'll realize that they can't tell a straight story, and we'll have talks about it. So that's kind of stuff I'm talking about. I mean, doesn't matter what I think. What I matters is what a jury will think. A jury, is not going to buy that story. So do you want to talk about pleading guilty? Some places don't have an offered plea. An offered plea is such where you can plead no contest, and therefore you just basically agreeing that not of your guilt, but that the state's evidence, if uncontested, is enough to find you guilty. So that's what a lot of folks do to try to have some middle ground to say, "Well, I never pled guilty to that. I just pled no contest." So that's a way a lot of times to avoid trial. I know, like in the military, we don't have the option to do an offered plea. You either have to fully admit it and confess to it, and the judges do a colloquy with the defendant, the accused, and they want the defendant to really explain how they're guilty of any all charges they're pleading guilty to. So, state courts on a felonies, you can just go up there, you stand in front of the judge, the whole thing's over in less than a minute. And there's some forms you fill out and whatnot. So that's the way normal felonies work, if they're agreed sentence, and not on a murder case, but on routine felonies, I would say, but not something where you're looking at mandatory life without parole. Okay, Turquoise Kitten is asking what got you involved in this case. I think I've said that in the last time or two. My brother got me involved in this. It's his fault. And he was telling me about this case, and I was so shocked that these Adelsons hadn't been prosecuted many years ago. And the more he talked about it, and I listened to it a number of hours, and I thought, we talked later more and more about it. And he was saying he wanted to get me on video talking about it. So he did that and put it on YouTube. And I started getting calls to get on another show. And I did that for a number of times. And then he decided he talked me into doing this podcast here, and the rest sort of history. So I just very very much, I guess, to the point in life where I feel like I got to speak things that I think are the public's being misled, and maybe the prosecution isn't getting the encouragement they need. So I've been calling it like it is with my experience as a prosecutor and defense counsel. So I call it the prosecutors when I think they're doing something wrong, or they're being weak, and they're not being aggressive, or whatever the case is. So I think if you follow my channel, you'll see that I'm just calling a spade. And if the defense is doing something that's corny and whatnot, what I'm not doing though is helping. I'm all about justice for Markel. So what I'm not doing is trying to help coach the defense, or giving them any pointers I think are going to help them get over on anything with the prosecution's case. So that's something I'm not going to do. But So I'm here all about to help let folks know that there is a case against these Adelsons, and I expect justice to happen for these because we cannot accept. Sorry, I hit a wrong button there. So I'm saying we cannot. We should not accept these. Much more delays on these cases. So here's a question from Sula is asking: will the phone calls between Don and Charlie be released? Being released be seen as prejudice to Don or defense at trial? Yeah, I think that's why they're not releasing that. They're trying to, I'll call it personal calls and whatnot. I know John did a request for records on the phone calls between them. So I think that's Charlie's phone calls. They denied it, or they cited some state law, some appellate law. But yeah, they released some of them. They didn't release all of them. The ones that Donna had with Charlie, though. So I think that'll probably happen after her trial that we get more of those released. TB's asking, could Charlie at least get charged for helping Donna flee? Yeah, I'm surprised they haven't arrested him for that yet. I think, at the time they're drafting up the arrest warrant for her, they knew they're getting ready to leave, and I don't think they had time to really deal with him. But yeah, I'm just sort of disappointed they haven't gone after him yet. And so I think they're maybe waiting for the digital evidence, and at least maybe they go after both of them when him and Wendi when they're ready, when they feel they're ready. But I think they want to do this digital review first. So Cat Love is saying, "Do you? I really think Wendy could somehow flee with a disguise with cash, abandon the boys, flees with them." You know, I think the one thing that's probably keeping her behind is the boys, and so I think that I'm surprised she hasn't yet, even despite the boys. But I think that's a good thing she hasn't tried to flee yet, because I think that that's going to make it easier to prosecute her. And if she does try to flee, I think that that's going to speed up her arrest. So. Yeah, I mean, when you stop thinking about this thing, how long has it been going on? Somebody's asking where Leo is. I see Tigger and little LJ here up on the table to my left. Tigger came up near me here a little bit ago, but you just couldn't see her on the screen. But I've not seen Leo. I think when I started, he was back behind me walking around, but he's somewhere else in the house. SP-74 saying after first trial, Sigfredo and Banois hung for one co-defendant. Could that be why they don't join Donna and Wendi? I mean, I wouldn't. That was such an outlier. I think that one, they had some anarchist type juror on there that didn't want two parents to be convicted of life without parole, having young kids, and so that was something that they would have screened out on jury selection. But I would just say use your instincts to realize that somebody that's not willing to follow laws, that sort of has a rebel type persona. I would say you don't want them on the case as a prosecutor. So somebody that slipped through the cracks, but I think they learned their lesson on that. Cubs win says, I don't think it was a crime for them to leave the U.S. at that time. I think there could be some reading into the statutes that I've looked at for Florida where you could interpret that as being, an effort to obstruct justice or something like that. They could come up with some kind of charge. I think that could stick. I can see that happening in other states where I'm at, and I'm just surprised they haven't tried to gone after him for that at a minimum, and not to mention the other stuff. But like I said, I think they was waiting on the digital evidence. TP is asking, is this one of the biggest cases you've covered in terms of public sentiment? Well, I've not covered any other case on my channel. This is the only one I've covered. I've covered, let's see, one or two other cases on Court TV they asked me to cover, and so that's it though. I would say this one is the most has the most twists and turns and most bizarre type of issues involved. I mean, just you look at all these different cast of characters, how bizarre their decisions have been made, and with all these lawyers involved, it's just really preposterous the way this has turned out. And um, I think that what the prosecution also failed to do. That's why I was motivated to speak out about it, because I hate doing this. Really, this is not my in my wheelhouse here. Enjoying having a talk here on YouTube. It's really not fun, but I guess I'm getting older and just sort of like, you know what, I just gotta let's cast that aside and just say, you know what, and just call it like it is. I'm tired of listening to people that I think have agendas that aren't for justice, and I'm not gonna let that go unrebutted. So just trying to rebut some of the stuff that's out there and some of the agendas that either are naive, let's say, or are outright trying to miscarriage justice for the Markells. So that's my agenda. There's other agendas out there, but so I got two cats plus a kitten, so three. um, yeah, I mean, this is like a made for TV kind of thing, really. TP saying there's enough drama with this case to produce a major motion picture. The problem is, there's so many twists and turns. You'd have to have a mini series about this, really. And I think having to write this thing would be like really complicated. There's so many like rabbit trails to go down and whatnot. So I think that's probably the biggest impediment to this becoming a made for any kind of TV or motion picture or something like that. And yeah, I don't know if you want me as an actor. There's nobody for me to play. Uh, Debbie Martin's asking, explain why you think they won't arrest Wendy until after Donna's trial. Well, I think it's just that they're going to use her to testify against Wendy. So I think they just rather have that sort of a clean slate where they're not having her in shackles come out of the courtroom and testify while she hasn't been charged yet. And so after Donna gets convicted, I think you're going to probably look at her being arrested real soon. And I think there's going to be more digital evidence I'll probably find against her. And like I say, I think their momentum. They got two Adelsons down, and the biggest benefactor of the murder um, then is next on the target, and as well as Harvey's involvement as well. So, excuse me. Dr. Cancel is asking, is wondering if Wendy mentioned Abba at the first bar mitzvah for the older son, or if she only did yesterday because now she's more afraid of arrest and wants to project an image of grief. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know, but that's something maybe somebody else can answer here. I don't know if we ever saw a video on that. Yeah, Maui Swift. Yeah, I actually have. Yeah, so two adult cats, mom and dad, for little kitten LJ. But LJ's growing so fast; she's like half adult now, just 3 months and a few days. I'm sorry, Deborah, your Bengal mix passed away tonight. Asia, 17 years. Wow, that's a long time. Sorry to hear about that. Alex is asking if Harvey was at the bar mitzvah. Yeah, he was there. He definitely was there. I saw him. Yeah, it was just like, wow. He should have been in prison long ago. And Heyman is saying the way it's been going, when he's pretty good at getting others convicted, she'll have to glass. That's what I've been saying. I mean, it's worked good. Every time she testifies, somebody gets life without parole. So I guess that's what the prosecution is driving at. So Colleen is asking if when he gets arrested, will they be in the same jail? Yeah, if they arrest her before Donna gets convicted, and she may stay there a few weeks after she's convicted for sentencing. If they don't have sentencing right away, at that time, you could have Wendi be in the same Leon County jail, but they'd be in separate wings. They're not going to have access to each other. They definitely would keep them separate. The reason the cats have such healthy coats, I see that question, is because they're getting a lot of salmon. They get a lot of fresh fish and stuff like that, and so that's how they got good coats. Because yeah, Tigger especially had really bad fur or hair, whatever you call it, and giving her a lot of good salmon has really helped. I just don't like buying that store food at all. The bags of cat food. If I look at the ingredients in there, it's just not good. And then Bengal cats, they have like a slow, they have sort of like a hypoallergenic of sorts. They have really low shedding compared to a normal cat. Lady Cymbeline is asking, I've always been puzzled by Sigfredo Garcia not speaking. Do you think it's strategic that defense prosecutor did not call him for Charlie's trial? Well, if he's not willing to speak, they're not going to call him because they didn't know what he was going to say. He probably would have just said, get out of my face if they said, we want to talk to you when they approached him in his cell or something. So he just wants to maintain his innocence and fight it. And he may not have that much information to be able to flip on the other Adelsons if he never saw them or whatnot. Josie's saying, I think Wendi went to the crime scene because she wanted to make sure the deed was done because the murder attempt failed in June. Yeah, it failed in June. And, there's something else that I talked to somebody today. I got a call from Florida, and it had to do with a phone call to Charlie on the 1st of July. So I'm going to look into that some more. And, because there was some interesting stuff that was brought to my attention that I want to do some more homework on before I talk about it and have my conclusions. Julie Nielsen is asking, is it true just as when he's selling where they can geolocate? I mean, I know they can do that. I just don't know they could do it that fast within a couple hours, of them trying to look for her. So if she's going by the Trescott around 12:30, and they weren't trying to like apprehend her at that point. They knew what her van looked like, I guess, but at no point did they tell her to stop when she was on Trescott. So if they can do it that fast, I don't know. I've not seen that happen that fast, but perhaps they could back in 2014. I just don't know. Coco T is asking, would the jury have been offended when Rashbaum told Katie she would only leave prison in a box? I mean, you can get, depending how you come across as a defense lawyer trying to cross-examine somebody else that's a convicted murderer. She's a convicted murderer, so I think I think that was it's a little bit strongly worded, but somebody's a convicted murderer. I don't really have that much of a problem with it. I don't use that kind of terminology, but and it does draw attention to the fact that she's never going to see the light of day, and that's he was trying to impeach her on the fact that she's lying to try to save her from having to basically only leave prison in a box, meaning a coffin. So I think, yeah, I'm okay with that. I think defense counsel does need to, do justice for their client and zealously represent them. I mean, that should happen. Sometimes defense counsel don't do that, and that's really a sad miscarriage of justice if you don't see a defense attorney even trying. I mean, I've seen it happen before where defense attorney that was on a case in South Carolina fell asleep and was snoring during the witness testimony. So that was upsetting to see. So yeah, you don't want somebody to sleep at the switch there as defense counsel. You want them doing their job. There's got to be a confrontation between the parties, as there is going to be a trial. Okay, Lisa Mona's asking, are Georgia Kaplan and Alex Morris friendly to each other? Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. I hear he's a stand-up guy. He's got a good reputation. He's a straight shooter kind of guy. So I think, good for them. And I just think it's going to be really interesting his interaction with what Rashbaum's done and trying to incorporate what Rashbaum's trying to do for the Adelsons. I think that's going to be pretty interesting. I wish I could be a fly on the wall seeing what's going on there. And he's not lead counsel, so I think he's going to have to. My guess would be he's just going to have to bite his lip a lot. Patty saying, I think Georgia will pursue Wendi, probably not Harvey. He was with Donna with the money dropped out. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more to consider, and you don't need that much evidence when you got the family dynamics like it is. And he also, there's evidence of how he acted at the house there of the rental house of Wendy's there in Tallahassee. Can look people in the eye. I was acting very shifty and evasive, and all that kind of stuff as a prosecutor I bring in. And I think there's a lot of digital evidence they'll find as well. And one of the things I hope they do is they interview all their friends and find out what they've been telling their friends over the years. If there's any friends, I try to find if there's any friends that they had a falling out with and see what they say about them and see what stories they told them. And I'm sure they have an evolving story of what different things have gone on there and their inconsistent stories and their different lies and stuff like that. So if I was a prosecutor, I'd bring all that out. And a lot of prosecutors just don't go to that level of detail. So, but if I was going after Charlie, definitely for sure, you got to go to that level of detail. Jimmy McNutty's asking, do I think Georgia's delaying Wendy's arrest to allow the boys to get older before their mothers take them away? I don't think that's a consideration at all. I think it's really been the politics that's been preventing these cases against Ailsons from going quicker. But I think the lid's been pulled off, and they're allowing to pull these things um, into court, and they decided to do it one after the other, and you know, it's working, and it's working good. Like I say, I think it could work even better if you charged them all at one time. You could break up the log jam. Yeah, there's more evidence we don't know about, right? I mean, just the evidence that we have been able to see is very, very revealing. Thanks to the state's sunshine laws. Most states we would never see this kind of information out in the public to be able to talk about a case this level of detail. So, this question from Top Cat 88 saying, "Do you agree the state has more about Harvey's birthday party? Rob A attended, so may have info." Yeah, I mean, there's going to be more details on that, and that's never been brought up in the other trials with the other witnesses. But like I say, they're going after Charlie. That was more specific to Charlie, and there's going to be other stuff that we don't know about Donna, and also what they have on Wendi as well as Harvey. So even the state attorney said there's stuff that the public has not been presented with information yet, and that's why some of that stuff they keep out of from the freedom of information type requests that people are asking for evidence there of different phone call records and stuff like that. Thanks, Mia. You're saying that I'm doing such important work. Please don't stop. But I was just mentioning to John the other day. It's like, God, there's so much stuff going on right now. I mean, it's like as I mentioned earlier, there's a couple seems like there's a new channel covering this case every couple days. I get some kind of feed or whatnot, and I don't really have time to see any of this. But I was telling John, it's sort of like this thing's taken off about, the public's getting outraged at what's going on with these Adelsons not being arrested and prosecuted sooner. So, but no, I will continue this case. So I just thought that's sort of like a really good thing, because I think it's just this kind of media attention is helping put pressure on the prosecutor to do the right thing, and the more people applying this kind of discussion on YouTube and then any other social media channels is a good thing for justice for Mark Hills. Yeah, I didn't want to talk about the dress, please, because that'd go down to some levels of conversation that wouldn't be professional, I think. So Linda Mon is saying, Carl, citizens, how could we push for Wendi to get picked up? I think just doing the supports that you're doing for this, I think you can. I don't think we need to like dial up or call the state attorney's office, but I think that they get it. I think that they're marching forward. I would say if they don't arrest Wendi within a very short order after Donna goes down, then maybe there should be some kind of like greater increase of pressure. I do know that the local attorney there that had represented Dan in the civil matter before Dan got murdered, his name's Stephen Webster. He thought that Wendi could be arrested in a matter of weeks from when he made a statement several weeks ago. So I just don't think they're going to do that. My impression is that they would do this. They would follow the system that they're doing it, which is use Wendi to testify, and then around the time of the trial, arrest another Adelson. So that's what I think they're going to do, and they're going to stick with. And they also have emails from Wendi, I'm sure that we've not seen before. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that even how Georgia warned Wendi that they have all of her emails or all of her Facebook posts, or I forget how she worded it. And when this issue came up about whether she was cheating on Jeff Lacasse or not, and so I thought um, that was you notice the testimony of Wendi was definitely filtered and changed somewhat by Georgia warning her, and she tried to like split the fence more on how she was saying that about Jeff Lacasse. So yeah, it was definitely something she got busted for lying about. So yeah, it just goes it just helped prove her what she then argued, which was that Jeff Lacasse was set up as a fall guy for this, to take the blame and have the reasonable doubt, and he was going to be the best form of reasonable doubt, and set the police off on this wild goose chase, and chasing after him. But thankfully, he didn't drive near Trescott there at the time of the that he was originally scheduled, and told her he'd be leaving town for Georgia. Excuse me, for Tennessee. Susan Jason saying, "What is ABBA?" That's the term of father that Ben and Lincoln called their dad, Dan Markel, when he's still alive, and they still, I guess, call him that now, even at their current ages. Yeah, and as someone's saying here, Abba's father in Hebrew. All right, I'm not going to repeat a comment there. So here's a question from Kate Wolf is saying, why doesn't the Florida bar do anything about Wendy's continual perjury? It makes lawyers look so bad. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the prosecutors, I guess, could do something about it to report it, because they're the firsthand witnesses to that, or the judge or something like that. I think they're just probably being hands off right now, because they don't want to get involved for some reason. And she's a key witness to help them or something. I don't know why they haven't, but And a lot of times state bars will say like, well, if they're an indicted co-conspirator, we want to wait to see how how the case shakes out or whatnot. So that could be it as well. I don't know since I'm not a Florida lawyer, but that's on what I've seen in other states that I'm licensed in. 17 cats. Wow. Okay, Dorothy Parker's asking, where can I watch the bar mitzvah video? Well, that's already been pulled off of YouTube, so that was put on the website for the synagogue today, and the one involving the Markel boy, as I'll call him, was pulled after a few hours. There's probably comments. They probably didn't have the comments turned off or something like that. Maybe there's a bunch of comments about the outrage of none of the Markels being there except the boys. Oh God. Oh yeah. All right. I see a lot of comments on the cats. That's nice. Yeah, a lot of times they are eating better than me. Seriously, I save the wild caught salmon for them. They're getting pretty picky eaters. JCP is asking, does Court TV pay the lawyer guest? No, they do not. So no lawyers get paid on there. They just ask you if you're willing to come on. And sometimes it's harder. It's hard when I'm on at in their morning show. It's like 7 o'clock in the morning for me that it starts that I got to be on. So I'm like up at 6 something, and my it's a little bit hard for me to be conversant on the issues because my brain's just not fully firing on all cylinders. So in the morning, it's a little bit harder for me to talk about the Markel case. But Ashira is asking, will Harvey or Donna work a deal with Georgia for Wendi? Everything has been done for her to date. Well, I don't think that they're going to cut a deal to hurt Wendi. I just don't see that happening. Although, it's very interesting. I think if Wendi will not refuses to talk to her mom, which I think is most likely the case, then I think that her mom is going to be so seething mad. So I think that she'd be tempted to do that. I still don't think she should go down that road. I think she's going to think that she's going to walk and that's going to be the end of it. Or at least if there's other prosecutions, everybody else will get acquitted if she gets acquitted. And maybe she's thinking if she gets acquitted, they'll be too gun shy to go after Wendy or Harvey. Okay, Dr. Kinsella is saying Rashbaum said leave prison in a box one too many times. He said it over and over. Okay. I don't remember him saying it over and over, but your memory, if that stuck out in your mind, I don't question that. And so yeah, he's just trying. I guess he's just trying to drive the point home that she's never going to see the light of day, and she had to come up with the lies, and that's the only reason she's lying is trying to change her story to basically frame Charlie. Okay, and funny, I just mentioned that light of day, and here's a question from Cat Love saying, "Why do people say people in prison will never see the light of day or see the sky when they get to go outside? It's not free, but they do get air and light, don't they?" Yeah, I mean they do, unless they're in like supermax prisons in Colorado. I think some of those that are in more like a solitary confinement, they may only get maybe an hour a day or something like that. So yeah, 23 hours a day without seeing the light of day. That's just a frame of reference that is not literal, but it's been a long time saying for many decades or probably over 100 years in America. I actually don't know the history of that, but I just had to mention it, and I saw that come up here as a question. So Gloria Bennett Bolkos is asking, why do you think they haven't arrested one yet? Well, basically, it's the same kind of deal. I think they're just waiting. I think there was politics that prevented all the Adelsons from being arrested and prosecuted sooner. But I think Wendy, this one, decided to go with her as a sort of setting the scene. She was the main benefactor. She was the one that was sort of driving the train, getting Donna all worked up to try to get her brother involved to hire the hitman and make sure Wendy wasn't punished and having to stay in Tallahassee for the next 14, 16 years, whatever it was. JK is asking, maybe part of the original plan was for Wendy to give up Charlie during her police interview because she thought he could lie his way out of it better. Yeah, I didn't know if that was confusion bombs that she was trying to set off there by implicating Charlie, but my my the more I've been thinking about it, I actually think that she was maybe scared that she's being treated like a suspect, and I think that the uh the issue was that because she had mentioned this previously about hiring a hitman and stuff like that, she had to mention that, and so she had to play off that. And I think that um, the probing questions from Detective Isom made her really think that okay, she's got to reveal more. The more she can point the finger at maybe Charlie or somebody else, the more she's going to be isolated and protected. And maybe they did talk about it ahead of time, and maybe they did have that plan. Like, yeah, just point the finger at me, and that they're not gonna be able to track me to this at all. It's just gonna make it look like Dan Rashbaum had many enemies. And if you think about how her statement sort of evolved, she went from saying, who would do this, like, and then she's like offering up all these people he made enemies with, kind of thing. So even her story just sort of evolved and whatnot. So um, yeah, I think that it could have been part of the plan, but I think she also somewhat um you know, and basically mentioned her parents as well, sort of too. She says that maybe they could have done it, and then she basically says she was relieved that her parents sounded surprised, yet she only talked to her mom, and yet they didn't really sound that surprised at all, and it sounded sort of rehearsed when you listen to that. So yeah, that's that could have been the case, but I think that he didn't have to worry about lying his way out of it because I think he thought he'd never be questioned by the police. In fact, he never was questioned by the police. So from what I saw, the police records, they had only talked to Wendy, and then in the inter in the with the detective Isom there on that Friday, the day Dan got shot, and then they talked to Harvey and Donna there at the synagogue, and they said they wouldn't leave town until they came and talked to the police. But then what they do, they took off that Monday morning, early that Monday morning, and when they called Wendy, she says she's with her parents driving to Miami, and she hung up, and she said something like, I'm having a bad connection now, hung up, and then John Laurel calls them in 5 minutes later. So yeah, it's just very suspicious behavior. Sharon Kirkland is saying, or Kurland is saying, didn't Rashbaum break some kind of lawyer misconduct advising Donna to run, or that an indictment was coming? That's something that a Florida lawyer said. Webster, that Stephen Webster said that he thought there was maybe some kind of ethical misconduct of him that he could get in trouble with state bar. So I'm not going to comment on ethics from another attorney in a different state since I don't know what their rules are, and I think it's unfair to me to comment on that. But you can look at Stephen Webster's comments on that if you want to go into more details for it. So he said something like we're supposed to uphold the administration of justice as lawyers, and every state has those kind of language written into their code of conduct for the attorneys. And so I think that what he was saying is you're not supposed to advise somebody like that could help them flee the jurisdiction, but ultimately it comes down to whether was Don telling the truth on that or not. So that remains to be seen. But you know, um, that's why I think that's sort of going to be buried at trial. I think they're going to maybe try to put a lid on that. The prosecutors aren't going to bring it up because could really taint the proceedings, and maybe there's some kind of conflicts or something that makes it look like Rashbaum should have bowed out of representing her, because it looks like he's sort of advised her on how to flee the country, or at least gave her a caution flag and saying, instead of saying no, you can't do that, I can't help you there. So in fact they're having a discussion on that, and whatnot. So it's just sort of an ugly, muddy type of issue. And yeah, I mean, it could come back and cause a conflict for Rushbaum of sorts. And so, and maybe, what I've seen before is in situations that maybe there's not a rub between the client and the attorney at that moment and during the trial. But as soon as the trial goes south, and then you got two Adelsons convicted, maybe that's the point they're going to start pointing the finger at the defense attorney. So I'm very surprised that they're just so enamored with Rashbaum, and they think he did such a great job. So that's really perplexing to me. Normally, that's the first person they blame is the lawyer if the case doesn't turn out good. Okay, this is something I've mentioned before because somebody sent me an email to this effect. Gene Crime Junkie's asking, do you think it's possible Wendy was dressed that way because she was supposed to find him, but the neighbor ruined it? Yeah, I mean that could be very well be the case. And I think the person that emailed me said that maybe she was supposed to drive by and make sure the garage door is closed, and she would have maybe had a garage door opener, could have remotely closed it as she's driving by, and just not even stop, but just sort of see if a car was still running in the garage or something like that. So who knows? I mean, that is a possibility. I just don't know. And I don't know that. I mean, I guess you could argue that as a prosecutor and say she was either there to inspect it, or be the person on the scene and make it look. Oh my gosh, let me try to help him, and then try to do CPR and that kind of stuff. I mean, any of that kind of stuff is possible. So yeah, some of you guys are thinking that. So not a lot of those questions have come up, but that's definitely a possibility. And it's within the realm of possibility. You could definitely argue that was one of the options that she had, that was part of the plan. Because what would have happened if she had driven by and the car would have been in there? Do you think she really just would have kept on going by, or she would have maybe said, oh, I saw his car in the garage and the garage door was open, I thought I'd stop and say hi and discuss what he had found out, and see what he had called me for earlier that morning? I mean, that could have been a perfect plan as well, to and then all of a sudden act like, oh my gosh, look what I found here, and then you called 911. So yeah, I mean, it could have been that detailed and posed and scripted that way. So, all right. So we have here. Let's see. Oh, somebody's from Maui there, Karen Spence. Gosh, I hope you're doing better, and not suffering from all that terrible stuff going on out there. It's really a tragedy. And yeah, Sundance Spirit, I agree with you. Really hoping the powers that be release the jail calls from Charlie to Harvey on and after 11/13, after learning Donna Adelson was arrested. Yeah, that'd be really nice to see. Matt is asking, why did a high profile lawyer like Rashbaum argue case that's so weak with clearly fabricated story? I Rashbaum, I don't know what you mean by high profile, but he's not a violent crime attorney. He's, from what I understand, more of a white collar crime attorney. White collar crime means non-violent type of crime. So you're talking about more of a paper case, like maybe Medicaid fraud, or things with people with a lot of money and embezzlement, or those kind of things, financial crimes. So there's a lot of paperwork. It's very boring to listen to a lot of those kind of cases. Here in a murder case, I mean, you're talking about violent of the ultimate type of violent act, and so it's just very much more charged emotionally and stuff like that. A lot of times you have to do a much better job of cross examination, and so it's a much tougher line of pressure as a defense attorney to win those kind of cases. So, um, but I mean, that's what Charlie wanted. If Charlie wants to plead not guilty and he has this fabricated story and he's telling you that's what the truth is, and he won't give it up. I mean, you can have a conversation saying this is ridiculous. Nobody's ever going to believe this. This is the worst, most fabricated story you could ever possibly come up with, and so no jury's going to buy it. And why don't you cut a deal? If you have that kind of conversation with a client like Charlie, he's just going to basically turn on you and say, "Well, get out of here. Then give me somebody that believes in me in my case." So I think he would have been fired as soon as he had that kind of conversation. And I've said that before on other podcasts. So where the more money you have, the less likely you are to get the absolute rock bottom truth on where you stand in your case and chances of winning. Because uh, if you paid a lawyer all that money and he's saying something you don't want to hear, then what are you going to do? You're going to fire him, and you want to hire somebody that is telling you what you want to hear. So no, John does not live in Tallahassee. John lives DFW Metro. Phoenix is asking, did I see Donna's arrest photos on the plane? They were awesome to see. Yeah, I did see that. Somebody sent those to me. Thank you. I won't see your name. And yeah, those were definitely interesting. And then shortly after that, I did see him on some different X channels, as well as on different where did I see that? Also on YouTube, yeah. And I guess Friday night, this coming Friday night, they're gonna have a coverage on that as well. And I think it's 2020. Well, it's already 10:06. All right. Hey, we're past 2 hours here. So um let's see here. I'm trying to see if there's anything else. Oh yeah, time went by pretty fast for me here, so I didn't cough as much after I got some of that water. So thank you for your support of Justice for Dan Markel and all the Markel family. And just please still continue to support this and spread the word. Have your other family members keep track of this show and or this case and any show that's covering this with the with showing the level of detail that the Adelsons were involved, and there's more arrests about to come up here. Some of the shows like 2020 and whatnot are a real disappointment. And I think they had that Epstein guy on some upcoming show. I hear it's going to be on this Friday, and they asked that he's like talking about it as well. And he basically gives Wendi a free pass. I've seen his book where he doesn't talk about her involvement at all. So it's very, very much a big, big gaping hole on really covering all aspects of Adelson's involvement. So somebody's asking me here, do I read the super chats? Um, I don't know what you mean by super chats. Is that where the thing where they pay money or something? I haven't seen any super chats here, and I've asked people not to contribute money, and because I don't need the money, number one. And I know with Ben monetizing this thing that um there are some funds that I get as a portion of the ad revenues that they have. So I do not need any of your money beyond that. If you want to avoid, I guess the best way to avoid commercials is to either catch the live if you're not a premium member, or just join premium member, because yeah, ads are very annoying. So and you can have up to like 6 family members on the premium. So I'm on John's premium package, so he's actually paying it for me. So I don't see any ads on YouTube at all. So with that, I'll go ahead and sign off. Thank you for your support, and have a good night.